Welcome to Talking Tactics, a show about insights and the results they ignite. I'm Safaniya Stevenson, a brand strategist and cultural analyst in the wonderful world of marketing. And every other week, I dig into the aha moments that changed everything for a higher education marketer. Each episode of Talking Tactics starts with an insight, following it from observation to action that created measurable results. We're talking about the breakthrough moments that happen with scrappy resources, and sometimes we'll even explore the tactics that, crashed and burned, because there's also value in trial and error. Your next innovative idea might be hiding in your data, your hallway conversations, or your own gut instinct. So let's get to it. Welcome back, lovely listeners, to another episode of Talking Tactics. Today's show is taking us to the Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina. And in the studio today, we have two absolute queens of advancement and fundraising. From UNC Charlotte, I'm joined by Beth Krigler, Vice Chancellor for University Advancement, and Penny Hawkins, Deputy Athletic Director and Chief Enterprise Philanthropy Officer. Welcome to the show.
Morning.
So happy to be here.
Before we dive in, have you guys recovered from your record-breaking giving day from a few weeks ago?
Of course we have. How would we answer that any differently? Now it's on to the record-breaking fundraising year, right? So no rest for the weary.
I also think you're probably asking the wrong two people. It's our favorite 49 hours of the year. We look forward to it because aside from getting our incredible alumni and community involved, it's such a great team building experience for the people who are boots on the ground helping us raise money and friends for the university.
And if you all are not familiar with the Niner Nation Gives, this year we're talking crazy record-breaking numbers for the school. And you are hearing this correct, 176% increase in gift amount. 176%. So today's episode, if you want the blueprint advice of advancement and setting records, these are the two ladies to be listening to today. So we're actually going to hop right in and start with an amazing campaign. So just some context for listeners, and the reason why there might be a little bit more jubilance in my voice today is I actually went to UNC Charlotte for my freshman year and lived in Charlotte for some time. And I'm a neighbor because I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. So this is super exciting for me. And even just going through Charlotte when I visit on the weekends or visiting family, there's not much of Charlotte you can't drive around and see some piece of UNC Charlotte, especially with their latest For the Love of Charlotte campaign. So I want to start with the heart of this campaign, right? Which is sense of place, which sometimes I think higher ed doesn't lean into quite enough. How do UNC Charlotte think about tying fundraising to the identity and impact of Charlotte? Because that's a bold move, especially knowing living and being here in North Carolina, Charlotte and Raleigh are both hot ticket cities, right? Best place to find a job, best place to raise a family, best place to move, East Coast up and coming. And so to position an entire university fundraising campaign around a city, how do you take that risk? Where did that come from? Why did we say, hey, we're going to lean in to the identity of Charlotte for this campaign?
I think it was obvious for us. I don't think it was bold or a big risk. We like to say we are this great city's great university, and Charlotte is growing, and the momentum is clear, as it is with the university. And so I think for us, it was, what makes a city is a university, sometimes an airport, and a hospital. And so I think we have brought in great community leaders that believe that espouse that. So as we talked about doing something bold with, a $500 million campaign, we knew we needed the city. We knew we needed community leaders. We knew we needed corporations. So I think the branding seemed obvious. It did not seem bold.
Well, And the other thing is there's a double meaning to it, right? Because the truth is, after several years building the infrastructure for the campaign quietly, we talked to, hundreds and hundreds of alums and donors. And every time somebody would make a gift, it always came back to something that they loved about this campus.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really was when the idea came to us and it had that double meaning, immediately everybody was on board.
It clicks right in the spot. You're like, hey, we're good. And I think also just knowing too that you have such a strong connection in the community already where it didn't feel like this is the first touch, or sometimes like that misalignment of people looking around like, who are you to do a campaign for the city? Like, we haven't heard from you, in years. So to know that you guys have kind of maintained that relationship with the city is really awesome, and I think is a really great pathway as we get into our next stat, because that kind of place-based approach naturally opens doors beyond alumni to feel connected. So you all saw that 42% of your donors for this campaign have actually come from non-alumni, which is actually opposite of the national trends. How did you intentionally design for a broader sense of belonging, especially with a city that has so many competing industries, nonprofits, causes? Like, there's no shortage of things to contribute to as far as like philanthropy and giving in Charlotte. So how are you connecting to those non-alumni? Because you guys are seeing something that people in other parts of the country and other universities aren't seeing, which is that non-alumni engagement.
One, we had to do it. We will be 80 years old as a university in September, and we're large. We're a large university now, but 50% of our living alumni have graduated in the past 12 years. So we weren't going to raise 500 million on your traditional alumni because our base is young. So I think we've built sort of the engine and the infrastructure that we've had to engage with families that care about the city, with corporations. How are we impacting their workforce development, their others? So I think it was somewhat built out of necessity, but it has been at the core of who we are and what we've done. So I do think there's deliberate strategy for that, but it's also natural.
I'm wondering, as far as thinking long term too, because like you said, there are some folks, and especially with UNC Charlotte, like you're like, hey, our base, our biggest group here is a little bit younger, not as far out from the university experience. How are you all tapping back into, I would say, maybe your alumni that maybe like hasn't been in touch with the university, or their university experience was, like you said, the 20, 30, 40 years ago? How are you reinvigorating kind of like those relationships and those engagements to have them just as excited as a new graduate or a recent grad?
So how often when you're back at this way do you come to visit campus? Have you?
I have visited campus, and I know that this is a little bit of a biased answer because I work in higher ed. So it's maybe been about 3 or 4 times since I've
Got it.
graduated, just because I have friends that graduated and then worked at the university.
So part of what's really lucky for us is 3/4 of our alumni live in the region. And so that means that that group that you're referring to, they're close enough by that if we can get their attention and they're not engaged, we can get them back to campus and it speaks for itself. It is an absolutely incredible campus. And then you get them here and you get to talk to them about all of the momentum, our rise in the rankings, R1 status, the explosion of our student population. And all of that gets them so excited and creates pride if they're not paying attention to what's happening, where they could see it from their own homes. So I think we're just really fortunate to have a campus and the momentum to engage those that might have kind of fallen off the radar.
Yeah, and you guys sound like the perfect case study of, when you're looking, you're talking about alumni and outcome and like connection with the city of, we want people to graduate and have a sense of place here, like be able to get a job, be able to start a business, be able to start a family. And Charlotte has been like the perfect ecosystem for the graduates of UNC Charlotte to still stay close by, which actually, as intended, becomes an advantage for the university. So when we talk about the different groups of folks who are interested in giving and participating in UNC Charlotte, Beth, like in the past, you and I talked about a key shift for UNC Charlotte really under you and Penny has been this overall kind of shift away from like what you kind of call like a one hit wonder gift, right? And taking a deeper portfolio based engagement. How does that, first of all, tell us what that means? And then second of all, how does that show up in day-to-day strategy and how you're sustaining kind of like those connections over time? Because I think it's really hard to even think about the underlining strategy with UNC Charlotte because you guys do have such like those huge wins. Like just a few weeks ago, again, like we saw the Niner Gives, and that could be like, you know, that one hit wonder and then a fizzle out. So how do you all maintain that momentum kind of simmering as you kind of go through the year?
Yeah. So I think that like every university and anyone listening, like we are focused on principal guests and we have a large percentage of you know, large guests, whether those are alums or other types. But we also know that we have to build the infrastructure and the sustainability. And pipeline is growing for us as well as dollars, which is great. But I think one of the things is for us, university advancement includes development, alumni, communications, events like commencements and others. We're a large team and we like to talk about, let's not work in silos or in org charts. How do we do this together? But we started an exercise really under Penny's leadership and alumni leadership where we started looking at portfolio-based alumni work. So yes, alumni are still doing events and yes, they're working on homecoming and they're doing all of that, but they can have a list of alums that we would like to engage. They look like on paper, they would be great for us, but alumni is going to have probably a better chance of engaging than a development officer calling them for the first time. So I think if we're all working together on, okay, what does engagement mean? What are those opportunities? And what's that referral pipeline look like when you meet someone, when you're talking to them? That's intentional. Again, it's a muscle we're trying to exercise and to work out. But we are very fortunate that we have leadership, starting with the Chancellor, that is focused on philanthropy. It's important. Our deans know it, our provost knows it, our faculty know it, our athletics teams know it. And so if you can start to, people are saying, hey, I just met so-and-so, on the road. I thought I gave them your number. Can you call them or can you do? So I think it's creating that culture of philanthropy. And we all say that. We all say it. But do we really intentionally try to build it? So I don't know. Penny can certainly say, I don't know if there's one specific thing I would point to and say, this is it. This is the magic bullet. But I think we are working across campus and across the community, and we're trying to bring all of our boards together. They're, ironically or not, we have 49 boards as the 49ers across campus. College boards, department boards, athletic boards, board of trustees. There are so many of them. But what if we all started working the same way? What if we all, had the same messages? Philanthropy was a cornerstone for each one. So there are lots of things going on.
You said culture of philanthropy. I think the thing that Beth brings to the table is there's an overarching mentality around being donor-centric. And when I think about what we're doing here that maybe feels different is both of us coming in from outside higher ed. both took the approach of like, a lot of this is like a puzzle. And if you're willing to be creative and put those pieces together, you can take what the university needs and match that to what the donor wants. And the other thing is, there's a lot of intentionality around, are we always talking about the biggest and best opportunities? And we do that religiously every Friday, once a month on a Friday. We've also trained all of our staff, and I don't know if you're allowed to make a plug, but our team, like boots on the ground fundraisers, our deans, our academic leaders, our student affair leaders, they've all gone through Plus Delta training. We're all speaking the same language. So I think all of those things, like being in the mix of what we've done over the last couple of years, means we're closing gifts more quickly, but that's because we're honoring the donors' time, and we're really highly aware of like what they want and what the university needs and plugging those things together. So when we keep seeing this upward trend in fundraising, there's been a ton of intentionality around it. I mean, Beth can downplay, but I do think it's like we're eat, sleeping, and breathing what's happening in everybody's portfolio. And everybody's on board. It's not just 3 or 4 people. It's the entire division.
Let's take a quick pause to talk about something big happening this summer. Engage Summit 2026. The new era of higher ed isn't about adding more tools. It's about building an agentic campus where AI works alongside your team to recruit smarter, support students faster, and scale impact without burning people out. From real-world examples of agentic systems in action to hands-on sessions that show how AI can coordinate enrollment, marketing, advising, and operations, Engage Summit is where institutions move from experimentation to execution. If you're ready to design a campus where AI doesn't just assist, but instead acts, learns, and drives outcomes, then you'll want to be in Charlotte June 15th through the 17th. But it gets even better. As an Enrollify listener, you get to grab your ticket for half off. Just head to engage.element451.com and use code Safaniya50 to apply the 50% off discount. That's SAFANIYA50. Okay, let's get back to the conversation. What you mentioned too, Penny, is interesting because I think sometimes you get the polar opposite experience sometimes where like you were like, hey, we're all trained on the same language, and it becomes so cold and ABCD, here's the script and this is what we read, and it becomes like super unpersonalized, and you lose that like human centric or donor centric side. But then you have the other side of the scale where there's not the centralization. Everybody's just kind of saying what they feel like they need to say to get a donor on board. How are you all balancing that overall like university giving message and core, and but also being connected to that individual donor message and what they need to hear without it, one, going off script, or two, not having a script at all?
I think one of the greatest, and I think probably unique things at UNC Charlotte is when we came in, Penny and I both outside of higher ed, their higher ed is very good at, this is how you do it. This is the structure. This is in this portfolio. When you get to this level, you turn it over to this person and they go, and oh, only this person can talk to a chancellor. It's just it's a structure. And we came in from smaller shops usually saying, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like what? How do we do? And a getting to yes. I feel like I have very few absolutes that I work in, but one is the answer is never no. It might be, well, let me get back to you, or let's talk about that, or let's figure out if there's a way to accomplish what you're trying to do. And that sounds simple, but if you just are beating that, you can't say no. We do have a yes culture, and we move a little faster. That starts with our chancellor and our chancellor's cabinet. It's sort of beat into all of us. If we got to get to market faster. We have to innovate. If we want to continue to elevate our brand and our rankings and our fundraising, um, we have to change, and we have to get to yes. So I think for us, that's been successful in fundraising, because if you can really identify what someone wants, then we can make that happen. And it's allowed us to have a creative spirit, and a collaborative spirit. And again, Penny and I can remind ourselves every day. We both can get hyper focused on what's next. What do we do? How do we do this better? And forget to celebrate. But it's constantly remind the team, this was great. This was a great gift and a great story about them and a great event. What's next? Not just what's next for that person, that donor. How do we leverage that? And things we're talking about today, we couldn't have talked about 2 years ago. We didn't even know that needed to be improved.
And I was going to come back to the shared language, because when I'm referring to that, I mean, it's like there's a structure. We all know what it means to cultivate a donor now. And before, that felt like Beth's interpretation of that was different than maybe my interpretation of that is different than somebody else on the team. But now we know, like, these are the questions that you want to answer when you're talking to somebody to know, are they even interested in supporting the university? And if they're not, that's okay. But we all know when it's time to just put somebody as a friend versus somebody who wants to be impactful from a philanthropic perspective, or a volunteer, or whatever that looks like. The other thing that I think we've done is, and it's one of the things that, and I hope that this comes across the right way, and Beth, you'll have to like piggyback off of this. But when we started the idea of a campaign, we wanted a collective vision. We wanted everybody to buy in. I think she and I would have said to you, we were going to raise the money anyways. Like, we were going to, whether or not we had this infrastructure, we were going to try and outperform what had been done before. And we would have. That being said, the vision that our comms team came up with around For the Love of Charlotte, sitting down with intentionality with all of the deans and gift officers, talking about what would be transformational for each college, that gave people the flexibility inside the training that we all had, inside the framework, to talk about it in their own words. And using that shared For the Love of Charlotte language and the vision that was set for the university, that gave everybody the flexibility to be themselves and be successful, but also inside what we all wanted to collectively accomplish.
Right.
Otherwise,
like
you're out
ownership.
there. Yeah. Right. You're out there just kind of doing your own thing. And we've done these little mini campaigns inside the campaign, where we had a big focus on scholarships at one point, and we created a toolkit and a challenge gift that kind of incentivized our team to go out there and like really work on that for 6 months. And so what we found, if we create those mini campaigns or mini initiatives with a lot of structure around them, it helps everybody kind of see what the end goal is and work together.
Right. And I imagine that kind of also provides an opportunity for, again, everybody's not always as jazzed about every pillar in a campaign. So if you kind of structure those challenges around, like you said, ooh, sustainability, that's my thing. And you for that 6 months, like, you're pouring your heart and your soul into sustainability, but then you're like, oh man, I'm not really as jazzed about it. But you can show up and kind of be able to shift your priorities, but it gives people that extra energy to really pour their heart into the things they care about. One of the things I was wanting to ask you too, Beth, is when you mentioned, instead of being so focused on here's the next thing, here's the next thing, here's the next thing, you kind of stopped and have like those reflective moments of, this worked really well. Let's use this for the next thing. And the next thing is this. When you look back at the campaign thus far, were there any like tactics or moments where kind of you and Penny are saying, okay, we're meeting with the team the next day, or we're meeting with the board, that felt like a, man, this is working, or maybe even, holy crap, this is working better than we thought it was going to work. And when the strategies just really like clicked and that momentum started to build, did you have any tactics or moments where you really felt that like come to life?
I've been doing this for a long time. Penny and I were together before UNC Charlotte as well, but we've both done lots of capital campaigns. That's kind of our thing, right? So you've launched them, you've done launching this campaign was, and we did it differently than others do. We didn't have a big gala. We did it at a homecoming football game with big videos, big fireworks shows, and both looked at each other a little teary-eyed, which I wasn't quite expecting. And it wasn't, hey, we've just launched 500 million. It was because for the first time, we built a campaign cabinet. We were putting people in the room that didn't know each other, that should know each other, and allowing them to leverage each other. Not just, we are getting better at leveraging them for the university, but I feel like as a young university, when we can start, we're there, getting each other in each other's business deals. They're vacationing together. They're doing that has just brought in so much for us. We have chairs that are bought in, that are excited, that are like, hey, did you know? Did you see? I saw, look at the last line of that. This person that lives in, wherever, Florida, Colorado. Do you see they're a UNCC grad? Because they'll say UNCC instead of UNC Charlotte, at times. And they're referring, it has been that really special moment for us. And I think that's why just the momentum is going to keep going. And it's not hitting 100 million, wasn't a one-hit wonder. And all the tactics in the world can't create that, right? When you can get that special sauce and they're believing and they're referring and doing the work for you, I think was the moment for me that was very different than any other moment I've had in my career.
I don't know that you mentioned they're all our alums, and that was new, right? Like other campaigns that we've done, they relied on those friends and pillars of the community, which is also fantastic. And there's a place for that. And I hope that we pull that back into a subsequent campaign. But for this time, it was really exciting that they're all alums.
Cool. So that our audience can understand the real shift in momentum around UNC Charlotte's like advancement and fundraising. Let's talk about the numbers like that were set at the very beginning, kind of where we are now, and some of the repositioning or possible rethinking just as a matter of what you all have seen kind of come in thus far. Because I think the numbers speak a really big, success of the tactics that have been put in place, the hardened energy and process behind it, and where it has really moved the needle in it as far as numbers.
So I'm going to talk big numbers. Penny can give all the specifics. 500 million was our goal to end June 30th of 2029.
Okay.
We will end this year at least 440 million. We will reach 500 million very early into next year. So the pipeline is suggesting. So we have a lot of big questions ahead.
I love how you spin that, Beth. And you're just like, we just have so many questions. It's like, okay, wait, no, we're gonna stop and do a round of applause.
Well,
the fact that we have surpassed the goal in what, like 3 years, 2.5 years ahead of time, which is spectacular. Like, just hats off to the entire team.
Well, we are excited about that and thrilled. And yes, it is an applause sort of moment. But for us, do you celebrate that 3 years early? Do you just keep going? Or do you set a really bold, audacious goal? Do you reset the goal? If you know, Penny and I, we're great partners because I'm always somewhere in the clouds and Penny's usually down going, hey, wait a minute, I don't know. But then when she's up in the clouds as well going, hey, it could be this, do we double the goal? I'm like, all right, we're really on to something now. If we're both going, look, that is achievable. This goal was way too small. And we had great consultants working with us to start the campaign. And I will tell you, they told us we'll have to work really hard and maybe have a few lucky things happen to hit 500 million. And we'll have to work really hard to be 60 million a year. We had 100 million last year. We'll do the same thing this year. So we laugh and go, I'm sure we're a case study for them going, hey, aren't they great? We're going, you really underestimated us. And it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is because the university has hit R1 status. It is because we have a growing enrollment. It is because we're now a top 74 public university in the country. We're in a city that's growing, but it's capturing that energy that we're doing. I think Penny will say as much as the dollars, like she'll give you all the stats of, well, we're bucking the trend of the number of guests, the number of donors, where it's coming from. That's why we're having the success, but it is a really fun place to be.
If people are really thinking about like the nuts and bolts of a gift pyramid and like, how do you put this together and what's a development plan? Because people will make a development plan because they're asked to do it by a board or an executive director, and they put it on a shelf. And in higher ed, each part of the development team is thinking about like, how are they going to reach their goals? But I think what's been really exciting about this is even though we, like talked about the mini campaigns and how that produced like really good results, every single part of what we're doing is operating at a higher level. And so it's not just because there's a lot of questions like, are we too reliant on one or two donors? And I'm really proud to say that of our gifts over $1 million, 86% of those are from unique individuals. So that means we're not just relying on one or two people. And then you look at the middle of the pyramid and the people who are going to maybe be our next, campaign chairs and principal gift donors. That is also growing. And then when we bring people in from, alumni engagement to annual fund strategies with your mailers and emails, and all of that's growing, partly because of Niner Nation Gives, which you mentioned right at the beginning. But it's because everybody is in the right seat. And again, I don't know if this is meant to be complimentary to Beth, the whole thing, but she's very good at putting people in the right seat. So working with people for a little bit, making sure that everybody's operating in the space where they can succeed and make the whole team more successful. That's been another thing that we've been really intentional about. It's not just one thing is carrying everything, every part of our growth. All things are coming together, and even if you're focusing on one more than the other in certain times.
One of the bold things we did, University on the Rise, our athletics is now starting to, on the rise. New athletic director, new basketball coach, new football coach. And we all know how fundraising in athletics has changed dramatically and become such an integral part of success. And that's something we had sort of plateaued in fundraising. And so when you introduced Penny, that's a new title for Penny. And it was athletics. Fundraising wasn't doing what we needed, and Penny was the answer. And so Penny's going to be leading that as well as leading campaign. We'll have an integrated team of athletic foundation, university foundation. I think that's unique. It couldn't happen everywhere because for hundreds of years it's been separate entities. We could do it, but it's also really bold in this day and age, I think, to bring someone in to run athletic fundraising that did not have a background in athletic fundraising. And so I think having the right people on the team, they're utilitarian players and leaders, right? And so Penny's not afraid of that to say, okay, athletic fundraising in some components is very transactional, I give you this, I get this. Mm-hmm. Different for us that live on the other side. We're like, wait, what, why do we care what that, what is that? Yeah. So I think that's part of the success as well. And I don't know how that can translate for others listening or other universities, but I think it is allowing the opportunity to do something different, the opportunity to just be bold. And you know what? If that didn't work, you change it. You're going to find, great people, you're going to find a spot for, right? So if you give them something that isn't right, there's going to be the next spot. And sure, we're going to make mistakes, but I think that's really been part of the secret for us.
The other thing that I think we've not mentioned, because obviously Beth did a great job of talking at the beginning about the fact that our chancellor Chancellor Gaber cares a lot about how this is working and that we're raising our sites. Our key volunteers are the same. So we have a great campaign cabinet, but our foundation board, our athletic foundation board, and our alumni board, they're all really engaged in helping us raise our sites too. And so sometimes that means they push us, and it gets scary because that's why Niner Nation Gives has gotten so big, because Gene Johnson has really helped us raise our sites. But they're also our biggest cheerleaders, and they're sitting next to us and making calls and telling us when we've done it right. And so you got to have the right volunteers on board and kind of serving as the catalyst for growth, but also as somebody who tells you, like, pats you on the back. And when we have that here, and I've worked a lot of nonprofits and I've had great board members, but I've never felt more kind of like, I'm going to stand by you and support you than I've probably felt here.
And it's probably as a nature of, again, kind of as we wrap here, is like one of the things that I think is interesting, and maybe why you're even just as someone listening, they've seen you. And I think, Beth, you mentioned this, is like building the seat. Like, we've created the seat, and they see you connect with other folks and be intentional about a unique opportunity. Oh, we normally don't invite this person, or we don't do this, but Beth or Penny, you hear, but this person has a really great skill set or has a really great perspective. Pull up a chair. Let's have a chat. And I think it's the nature of knowing that, oh, the next steps moving forward aren't just a formulaic process thing. It's you are taking an intentional, like, assessment and saying, we're building a seat. And I think that when you put that out there, people, one, receive it well, and two, know, oh, I can bring this person in, because if we provide something that's valuable, or we provide something that's motivational or optimistic, it could go somewhere because they've seen you built it intentionally, which I think makes all the difference.
I think I'll just add to that, and just because it's top of mind, because we've been talking about it the past couple of days. I think when typical universities, and we're fortunate we're 100% centralized, that I know that's not the case everywhere, but I think this is different here, that we're talking about great boards. We said 49 of them. But if you look at your top boards and you think everyone's got a development committee, why aren't we meeting together? Why aren't we understanding each other's tactics? Why aren't we taking this work and let's apply it across the board? So it's, again, that they're leveraging each other, they're meeting new people, but they're not afraid to say, but wait, this is my top athletic donor. I don't want them to talk about giving to their college, or vice versa, right? However that
Or the
works.
vulnerability, like, hey, this actually isn't working for us, and having the ability to be in a vulnerable space to say, hey guys, we tried this, so you don't have to.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
But your governance committees, like, imagine a world where you just had a portfolio of alumni and people and said, actually, what board would you like to sit on? And is there a natural progression of where you go? We have great people. It's happenstance, right? We've been sitting in meetings where we invited someone to join the foundation board, and they were like, oh, well, yesterday somebody invited us to join this college board. We're like, oh, sorry. I mean, how do you not know that, right? How do we not know that? What are we doing? So lots of room for growth, but I think it is just that, we're one university, and fortunate that lots of people love the university, and let's not pigeonhole them in their leadership or their philanthropic efforts into one bucket.
Well, thank you all so much. Like, this was a exciting episode for me, because hopefully you listeners out there hear, like, if you have a great location, building the right seats makes the location even better. So thank you all.
100%. Well, thank you. We're honored that you invited us.
Yeah, this was fun.
And remember, everybody, keep walking the walk and talking those tactics. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Talking Tactics. If you want to try out the tactics you heard on today's show, you get a full 10 from me. And I would love to hear about how you made them your own. You can find me by searching Safaniya, Safaniya, on LinkedIn. You know, there's not many Safaniyas on there, so you'll be able to see me. And if you're enjoying Talking Tactics, please rate and review the show. The overachiever in me needs your feedback, and I'll certainly use it for confirmation or, optimization, depending on the review. And finally, if you just can't get enough great podcasts, the Enrollify Podcast Network delivers with an amazing selection of other marketing and admissions-based podcasts just for you. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com. See you next time.